right in time for your dog to bark.
Yeah.
Of course, right.
There might be some background noise too. Like this is not a professional studio, so you may hear Grace.
Right.
So I am recording now.
Right,
Obviously, we haven't started the show yet, but so I have the Zoom recording. You have your phone recording.
Okay.
Let's just check. I'm going to check GarageBand real quick to make sure. Oh, I'm not recording there.
The one place that she wants you to record.
So now we are recording in GarageBand. Kellen.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
And my levels are here.
And you still can't hear yourself.
No, I can hear myself now.
Oh, you can.
Now that you've turned him up, I can hear.
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So everything's recording. So I'm going to take a couple seconds to compose myself, and then I'm going to launch in.
All right.
Yeah.
He's going to cough just 5 more times.
It's just like, oh my God.
Yeah. Wow.
It's ridiculous.
These New England allergies are no joke.
Mm-hmm. Oh, God.
All right. Here we go. Hey guys, welcome to the podcast number 3. I am very excited about our guest today. I'm also excited to have Kellen Wellborn joining me. We are here at the Man Up to Cancer Global Headquarters, which is also known as my family room at the moment. So Kellen and I are appropriately distanced. Joe is way appropriately distanced. He's in North Carolina. So before we get to Joe, I do want to talk about one topic that's been on my mind today with Kellen. So I stalk Kellen on social media, and I noticed today that Kellen was on her Peloton this morning. Today, is this true?
It was true, yes.
Okay.
And I'm not usually somebody who shares my exercise by any means.
Yeah, you don't share much on social media at all, but you were sharing because you did it for a good cause, which isn't really my interest. I think that's great. Good job. But my interest is in Peloton in general. Now, you may recall there's a little bit of controversy lately about, do you remember the Peloton woman?
The scared Peloton.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yep.
So the scared Peloton woman, there was this woman, if you haven't seen this, there's this woman in a Peloton ad, and her husband gives her this thing for Christmas, and she unwraps and she's like, oh yes. And the blowback was like, oh, so this dude like thinks his wife isn't like hot enough. He wants her to cycle every morning so she can keep that rocking body, right?
Yeah.
Like it, and there was like a screenshot of her.
Yeah.
Where she looked
super scared.
She looked like a hostage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So Kellen, are you a Peloton hostage?
No, I am so far from a Peloton hostage in the fact that the bike that I use was walked down from 2 houses down my neighborhood to my house from my friend and her college-age daughter because it was in their basement, and I was literally going insane in my house during this quarantine, and we used to bike together in her basement. Now, we don't actually have the Peloton bikes, so we are not the Peloton ladies. We do have a Peloton subscription that lets us pretend we're Peloton people.
Okay, now look, this is the no judgment zone, so I am neither for nor against Peloton. I would love a Peloton or an Echelon or whatever the hell bike I could get in here to actually do some working out. So Jason, your husband, is not forcing this upon you.
No.
And is your neighbor a hostage, perhaps?
Yeah,
we need to be concerned
Angela,
about your neighbor?
Yeah, we should be concerned about Angela because she isn't getting any time to get on her bike. So we should just be concerned for her mental health. But no, neither of us are Peloton hostages. And we did find that ad hilarious. But actually, the thing I found most hilarious about that ad was the absolute outrage at it because, okay, I'm in marketing, I'm a woman, I'm a feminist, I'm all for people being tone deaf and us calling them out on it.
Yes.
And it was tone deaf, but it also was just such a overreation to the ad.
Right.
And it honestly probably just increased their sales.
Yeah,
honestly.
I think they're just laughing all the way to the bank.
It's just like one of those things that people get outraged, and there are so many other things to be outraged about, and that is just a stupid thing to be outraged about. I mean, you might get emails on my behalf for this comment. I don't know. But
and I can say that Peloton is not a sponsor of the show. We love you, Peloton. All right, let's jump in with Joe. So Joe Bullock.
All right.
Joe Bullock.
All right.
Hi, Joe.
Hey, how are you doing?
We are doing great. So happy to have you here.
Thanks.
So Joe Bullock is a country boy. He is born and raised Durham, North Carolina, and
Yep.
He is a husband. He's a dad to 2 teens, one of whom is going off to college
Yep.
this fall. He's a pre-K teacher, and like me, Joe is a colon cancer survivor. Joe plays a huge role in Man Up to Cancer. He's the lead administrator of the Howlin Place, which is our Facebook group for men impacted by cancer, all types of cancers, and men who are patients, survivors, caregivers, friends. So
Yep.
he's just doing an amazing job with the group, and I am so thankful for you and for meeting you and for you coming on board and doing this mission with us. So thank you. So the first question I want to ask you, Joe, is this. If I had told you when you were in treatment and you were at your lowest point, if I had told you that you were going to be leading a group for men with cancer, making a difference in the lives of hundreds of men from around the world at your low point, you probably would have told me I was crazy, right?
Yeah, I would not have even thought about doing it. I mean, I remember laying in bed a month or so after diagnosis, listening to a podcast and,
Right.
just kind of laying and listening to podcasts and kind of laying there in my crap basically for being in cancer, and not even thinking that I would ever be doing a podcast that dealt with cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and same thing for me. Like when I was at my lowest going through my treatment, the idea of even like having a phone conversation at that point was not even on my mind, let alone, being able to do something that's helping people and also helping us. So take me back in time. The cancer has been a theme, for lack of a better word. It's been a theme in your life going way back, because so go through those things. Like you had a testicular cancer scare at a young age.
I did in my 20s. I was 25 at the time.
And how old are you now?
And I'm 52.
Okay.
And a friend of ours, my wife and I, who was a doctor, suggested I get a physical. My fiance at the time was concerned. She was like, it's been a while since I had a physical. He's a friend of ours. He said, look, why don't you come by my office? Let's do a physical. I had no health insurance at the time. And he was like, I'll give it to you as a wedding gift. So I went to his office, did the physical. We did the old hernia turn and cough, check. And he noticed, you only have one testicle. And at the time, it was like,
you don't hear that every day, right?
About it. Yeah, you don't hear that every day. And I told him I was kind of embarrassed about it, didn't really like to talk about it. I was always told I was just born that way. It wasn't that big of a deal. And he got really quiet for a moment and said, no, this. And he was kind of a young doctor. He was probably in his early 30s. So, and he was kind of concerned about men's health. And he was like, we need to investigate this a little more. I'm really thinking you have an undescended testicle. And that's the first time I heard anyone say the word cancer. I think you could have cancer and don't realize it. You could have been living with it for years and don't realize it. And of course, to tell a guy that 10 days before he gets married, was just like, what do I do? Do I tell my fiance? Do I postpone the wedding? It was just really a lot was going through my mind that day. And of course, he kind of calmed me down from hyperventilating that day. And he was like, no, go get married, go on your honeymoon. But the next day you need to be in my office. We're going to go and schedule an MRI. We're going to schedule surgery. We're going to remove that undescended testicle, and we're going to biopsy it. And ultimately, luckily, there was no cancer found. No cancer had spread. But I went through about a month during my wedding and probably 3 or 4 weeks afterwards, waiting for test results that if I was I going to be living with cancer. And luckily, it was all negative. So, right. But we have met friends in the group, Jason Greenspan, who was diagnosed at age 17. With, stage 4.
Right. Yeah. I think it was
a very real thing.
It was like a week before his senior prom or something like that, right?
Right. Exactly. And exactly.
So,
and then,
let's talk about your father ended up getting diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Yes, we had built a home across the street from my parents, basically. And when we moved here, once again, my wife was like, "We're getting ready to have our first child," and she was like, "It's been a while since you've had a physical."
So there's a theme with delayed physical.
There's a theme, right, and which is not uncommon for men.
Right.
And so so I ended up so happened to be that the doctor I got was actually the same general practitioner that was my mom and dad's. And so I walk in his office and he goes, you're Don Bullock's son. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, well, did you know your dad is showing early signs of prostate cancer? My dad had never told me this.
Which
and I don't know that the doctor should have said that.
Right. That seems like right there is like, I've never heard a story where a doctor has actually confided in another patient.
Laid it right out. Right. He just laid it right out.
So what did you do with that information?
Well, ultimately, he said, you're 35 and, honestly, you could walk out of here and not really think about it. You're still young. But he was like, I think you need to get your PSA checked. I think we need to do the whole finger check. I think you need to think about it and do it now. I think you need to do it in 5 more years when you're 40, and then another 5 years. And then after 45, I think you need to have regular checkups. Because ultimately my dad decided not to treat his prostate cancer over the years. He sort of let it be. He didn't want to discuss it. It was sort of a spot of turmoil for us, because whenever he didn't like me to bring it up.
It's very common for a generation of men, also men in general, specifically with prostate cancer, because actually it's, with PSA numbers, they fluctuate so greatly depending on each man. And so many men, as they age, their PSA numbers go very high. And so, prostate cancer is very common and one of those things that you find more and more men living with. It seems like.
Was he like a traditional man of his generation in that if there's any health issues or health problems, it was just not talked about?
Yeah, it wasn't talked about. Never. I don't know that he ever went to see a doctor until he really had to. Honestly.
And what was it like for you to go through as he ended up passing from his prostate cancer? And when was that?
It was a year before I was diagnosed. So ultimately, for the last year, I was one of his caregivers, which was really rough because we did not have a great relationship, and I had to kind of put a lot of things aside to be there for him during that time.
Did you grow up in North Carolina? Because that is where you currently are, correct?
Yes, I grew up in North Carolina.
And so your family is generationally from that area, it sounds like.
Yes, they are. Yes.
Yeah,
from this area.
My husband and my in-laws are generationally and in South Carolina. And one of the things that I find interesting with what you're discussing is the sharing of health information within a family is very, I recognize that story very, familiar to what his family and how they deal with health issues. It seems there is not just always a man-to-man communication, breakdown that happens, but culturally, it seems like the Southern culture lends itself more towards like it's nobody else's business.
Yes.
And
exactly.
so I it sounds like you had a very similar structure in your family as well.
I didn't know. I didn't know. I've found out more about cancer in my family after I was diagnosed with cancer.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of people started coming out saying, "Oh yeah, we do have a history of colon cancer in our family."
So you've been grappling with your dad being sick, then the loss of your dad, being a caregiver, and that that relationship. That was a tough time for you, and then a year later, you hear the words yourself that you have.
I did, and in between that, my mom died, also. So in fact, I kind of ignored my symptoms to help my mom, and kind of put aside what was starting to show. My cancer was starting to show even then, even putting off my colonoscopy for about 6 months because of it.
And I don't mean to gloss over your personal experience, but I have a lot of stuff I want to get to, but tell us a little bit about, diagnosis and then kind of the what you endured after that for treatment.
So basically after my dad died, probably about a month after he passed away, I started noticing some blood in my stool. Not a lot. Like I thought, did I eat strawberries that week? It was just sort of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then started having, every once in a while, I have a little bit of abdominal cramping, but not enough so much that it sent me to the ER. I would just take a gas X or something and not really think about it. And I did finally, it was my 50th. So I was doing better about getting my physicals. I started kind of going on my birthday is what I started doing. And when I went to the doctor on my 50th birthday, I started telling him about some of my symptoms. And he was like, well, you're 50 and, you know, it's time to get a colonoscopy. Because at that point, the age hadn't been lowered. This was back in 2018.
Sure.
And so we scheduled my colonoscopy about a month later, by the time I could get one. But it was 3 days prior. My mom basically passed away 3 days before my scheduled colonoscopy. So I called and canceled the colonoscopy. Went to get her through, help my sister and make plans, arrangements, and then kind of still ignore the symptoms. I thought they were just stress. I used Dr. Google a lot, which is common. And a lot of it was coming back was hemorrhoids and stress. So I thought, well, maybe it's just the stress of dad's death and then dealing with mom's death and dealing with the arrangements and family issues that were going on. So I still continued to put it off. I would every once in a while have the same symptoms. It wasn't until probably February of March that the blood got worse.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed that, you know, there was actually blood in the toilet. And I thought, okay, I have to deal with this. And so called my doctor again, and he was, we rescheduled colonoscopy. I didn't actually, I still put it off again because I just felt like there wasn't the right time to do it. And I actually didn't have the colonoscopy till, I'm a pre-K teacher. So I decided, well, I'm going to wait until I'm done with the year, which was mid-May. And once again, putting it off. And had the colonoscopy, went for the colonoscopy. And that day when I got there, the prep, of course, is awful with colonoscopy. It's worse than the colonoscopy itself.
I don't know what you're talking about. That's like one of my best days of the year.
It's just like you need to take a full vacation.
12 hours in the bathroom is fun.
Really, yes. I always say it's a different type of Netflix and chill. It really is. The old iPad in the bathroom.
There you go.
So when the day of the colonoscopy, when I was laying there, I Googled enough to kind of know what I was looking for. And they give you that twilight medicine when you do it before they scope you. So I laid there and he put the scope in. I actually drifted off asleep. I woke up, looked up at the monitor, and I saw this meatball hanging off the side of my colon.
Oh.
And I look up and I'm starting to hyperventilate, and I'm like, is that what I think it is? And the doctor goes, you're okay. We're going to mark it. We're going to tag it. I got around it. We got up to your colon. Everything is good. You've got 2 other polyps we're going to remove. We're going to biopsy it, and then we're going to talk. But his words to me were, you know, tear up thinking about this. But his words to me were, sorry.
No, don't apologize.
Sorry. His words to me were, we've got this. We've got it. And so, sorry. That we've got this. And so when he said that to me, and I wish all oncologists would just ultimately say that to their patients, that we've got you or we got this. And that's what he wanted me to feel that.
Yes.
At the moment, and we didn't even talk about stages yet. We left that day knowing that it was probably stage 3 because of the location of the tumor and how deep he pretty much thought it had gone into the muscle, into the wall of the colon. Because he was pretty certain that there were lymph nodes impacted. So, but we didn't know. That was probably what we were hoping for with stage 3. We weren't sure of anything.
So there's a lot of us. We both have gone through colorectal cancer. There's a lot of us who were diagnosed at colonoscopy, but very few of us who were diagnosed like you were, where you're actually seeing it and like talking to the doctor right as it happens. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And then I just can't help but think about you coping with the loss of both of your parents right around that time, and then you and your wife raising a young family, 2 teenagers. It's overwhelming. Yeah,
it was a lot to take in at the time. I didn't realize till probably a couple of months in how depressed I got. I mean, it probably took because I was pretty robotic. My wife is an RN at the same hospital where my cancer center is located at. So from that next day, she had already figured out who my oncologist was, who the surgeon was going to be. It was pretty much like showing up for my wedding. I was just told where to stand, where to move, where to walk. I mean, literally.
I mean,
I had nothing.
I find that's how, I mean, I think men cope similarly, but caregivers, I mean, you probably recognize this with taking care of your parents. It sounds like where one of the ways that we manage as caregivers, because I don't have someone in my life with cancer, but I do have someone in my husband has a chronic illness. And so being a caregiver, the way to cope, to not fall apart in the moment is to plan, I find. And so it doesn't surprise me that while you were getting your head around and dealing with the emotions of the diagnosis to yourself, that your wife was taking every step and moving forward, because it was how she was coping, was making sure that she could just feel like she was getting a handle on the things that she could get a handle on, because everything else is ultimately out of your control.
Yeah Being a nurse, she was very much in that clinical headspace when it came to my cancer. She pretty much had to, when we got to the therapist part, when we finally got to a cancer therapist at our cancer center, she was pretty much like, please take him away. Like, he needs to just spend hours with you talking, because it was
he needs
just,
to spin out, and
So I want to get into I want to get into identity in a minute, but so you went through you had, what was the phases that you went through in terms of surgery, then chemo surgery? I forget what the order was.
Ultimately, the tumor was 10 centimeters. It was in the sigmoid region of my colon.
Yeah, well done. That's a nice sized tumor, Joe.
It was, it was high enough above my rectum that I didn't require a bag or anything, and they could go in. The surgeon was pretty, confident he could get everything. He removed the tumor, resected my colon, and removed 40 lymph nodes. 3 tested positive for cancer. It was about a 7-hour surgery. He spent a lot of time checking all my other organs and just making sure that, because originally it was supposed to be a 3 or 4 hour surgery, and they came out and told my wife that he was going to spend extra time checking my other organs.
So real briefly,
to make sure everything was clear.
I will share with you that I had a 9 centimeter primary tumor in my colon. I had that removed. I think I had 23 lymph nodes, and one was positive for cancer, which turned out was enough because I ended up metastatic. But your tumor is a little bit larger than mine. Not that we're comparing. We would never compare that kind of thing.
That's like where women talk about the size baby they birth.
Yes. How many pounds?
Yeah, mine was, yeah. He was saying mine was more oval or something. It was but it was like 10 centimeters.
This is a weird pissing contest.
But they got around.
Yeah, I know. Like that. I don't need my surgeon to like weigh in on like size and shape. Like as long as it's out of me, like I don't care. All right. So you had the primary, and then you had FOLFOX, which is a type of chemotherapy.
No, it wasn't FOLFOX. It was oxyplatin, and it was that oxyplatin and Zanola.
And Zaloda, you had the pills, and oxaliplatin is the IV drug. Okay, got it.
Yes.
And so that was essentially to make sure that they tried to get everything and that you didn't spread.
Right. It was, they called it cleanup chemo is the way my oncologist and surgeon described it. Because he was like, and there was even a struggle with that, because from what I was being told, he even said, I think I got 99.9% of your cancer. And I looked at my wife and said, well, then why do I need to do chemo?
Right.
And she was like, no, we're killing this. That's what they were all, we're going to kill this. That's why you need to do chemo.
Right. And with the 3 lymph nodes, you're in that gray area of like, especially at the time too, of do you treat with mop up chemo, clean up chemo, or do you not? And then, but you have, you have been NED, which in the cancer land is no evidence of disease, the holy grail for cancer patients. You have been living in Nedville for how long now?
About 14 months.
Awesome.
About 14 months. Yeah.
And with your cancer specifically, and I know it's different for is there a point that they consider you, in remission, and how far from, being Ned is that?
5 years.
Yeah.
Is that right,
So
Trevor? I
so
think 5 years
Ned
is the best.
Ned technically is remission. So Joe,
Yes.
remission. So Ned is the term that has kind of taken over for remission in some corners
Mhm.
of Cancerland. So when we say
Yeah.
Ned, that's that basically means remission. I just think that they're getting away from using remission because that tends to imply that something's coming back. Like
Right.
I'm in remission,
Right.
but no evidence of disease is kind of a more positive term that people have really
Right.
grabbed onto. So 5 years, I think is still for most people with colorectal cancer, 5 years of no evidence of disease is basically people start using the other C word at that point, which is cure.
Right. Right. Yeah. Because
Cure.
I know that, it does seem like there are these benchmarks, right, that you kind of
Yeah.
look to achieve, to maybe at some point have one thing that you feel like you can breathe slightly easier. Never totally easy, because obviously, there's never, but
the likelihood after 5 years
right.
statistically goes way
Right.
down.
Right.
And it goes down over that period
Exactly.
of time. But
And that is one of those things that I notice with, anytime people are diagnosed with cancer or any type of illness that is either potentially terminal or chronic, we love those numbers. Those numbers that we can look at, those statistics that we can look at, they either hurt us or hinder us, really, in the sense of mental health.
Right.
But we can't stay away from them. Like we just, it's like when you said you went to Google Doctor, and you just couldn't help yourself to try to figure out this on your own. And I feel like the numbers and just the statistics, those year benchmarks, like we, I mean, obviously I'm in a different, you guys are in a totally different headspace than I am, but it definitely seems like it can be something that we seek out and then ultimately can be our downfall for our own expectations.
Yeah.
Joe,
exactly.
Let's dive into identity a little bit. I know for me, my identity has always been wrapped up in, my roles, being a dad, being a husband, being a contributor to the family. I don't think of myself as a sole provider because my wife and I both work, but a co-pilot of the household and very active and engaged in my roles. Now, when cancer came along and hit me, a lot of those roles and my identity really got kind of shaken. I felt like I was on unstable ground. How do you think about identity and the ways in which cancer might have rocked your boat a little bit in those ways?
Well, ultimately, because I'm a pre-K teacher, so to go from being kind of the happy, jolly, enjoyable teacher, I became a very sad, very broken, because of the cancer, because of what the chemo does to your body. And that was very odd for a lot of people, especially I continued to work. I continued to be a teacher during chemo. And a lot of the parents started noticing. They were great, though. They were supportive. But a lot of the words I got back was, Mr. Josie's really sad right now. So I had to really go through all that whole process of explaining that identity to them, why I was going through that, which was tough. It made things even harder. I think it even helped. It even caused me to nosedive even more into depression.
Well, because then it sounds like you were dealing with the guilt of not being the person who you had been.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I mean, granted, I teach at my preschool. I'm the only male teacher. And I have like 10 other staff members who are just angels on earth. I mean, they took care of me. They were very supportive of my
being
journey.
With that age children and them always point, I mean, that age child specifically is really good at pointing out things that adults filter from your consciousness, and kids just let you know exactly what they're seeing. And they don't understand why anybody would ever maybe not say something. So I can see that.
And they're 4 and 5 year olds, so they're very they're just starting to awaken to their own personality. So definitely.
So I've gotten to know you really since January, and you are, to me, you are wow, full of energy, full of life. You have a lot of joy. You express a full range of emotions from feeling really down to feeling really up, like you, and you're empowered now. So the idea of you being, you know, in that space, like sad and depressed, kind of like, I imagine you think of me, like imagine me being disabled by anxiety and depression. That's hard for me to imagine, but that's where you were. I mean, like you said, you used the word broken. I use that for my journey too, but you got to that point where you just weren't yourself.
Right. And ultimately, I did just spend time with a therapist and started going to a local support group. The ultimate thing, the hardest thing about going to a local support group is it was next to the hospice center where my dad died.
Oof.
So
Yeah.
the first group I went to, I was just like broken and just in a puddle of tears, just because I was looking straight across at the doors to the hospice center. So that ultimately made it even
Right.
worse. And they should move it. And I ultimately avoided going for it. They only met once a month. In the first month, I avoided going, and it wasn't for another friend in COLONTOWN who was a group that Trevor and I are in. Aaron Duffy Wood had sent me a private message saying, you know, are you going to go to the group tonight? Are you coming to support group? So I thought, man, because someone knew me, I thought, well, I better go. I better show up.
Somebody's holding you accountable.
Right.
Yeah.
Someone's holding me accountable to this from another Facebook group. I better
That's
show
the only
up.
reason people sign up for classes for exercises, so that there's other people around them holding them accountable. So I think it's the real human nature part of our existence.
So you felt you were strong enough and brave enough and comfortable enough to say, I'm struggling, I'm down, I'm depressed, I need to do something. You started going to the group, you started reaching out online. So when you started reaching out online, I think of Joe right now as like the cancer whisperer. Like he knows more. So I call it Cancerland. Cancerland to me is this online space of like these tons of groups that are all kind of cross-pollinating, and you start knowing all the people out there who like have cancer and are talking about it. So Joe's the cancer whisperer because he is friends with everyone in Cancerland, and like he's out there. When did you start going online and making those connections?
I think it was in August of 2018. I started out in COLONTOWN. And I remember there not being a whole lot of men in COLONTOWN. And I think I only had about 80 friends on Facebook at the time. And all of a sudden, I started getting these Facebook requests. A lot of them were women that were in COLONTOWN who were just trying to be supportive.
That was a good asterisk on that.
So,
a lot of them were women.
They were trying to be supportive.
Cancer patients.
But, right. But I remember I got one from a gentleman named Charles Griffin Jr., and he had sent me a personal message and just of support. And so, of course, a friend requested him and some of his conversations, and we didn't talk very much, but it was enough that he just wanted to say, hey, you got this, I want to support you. He did himself have stage 4 colon cancer. He passed away last year.
Yeah, great man, Charles Griffin. What a great man.
Great man, football player. Had some really great talks. And one of the talks he did was called the Glow Stick Talk. And ultimately, what he was saying is just be there for people, be supportive of people. And I think that ultimately, when I thought about those words and what he said, just rang in my ears over the next couple of months. And
yeah, that gives me goosebumps every time I think of that.
Yeah. And it made me think. So as I continued on my journey and in COLONTOWN and in another group, Blue Hope Nation, the Colon Cancer Alliance, as I saw these men in these groups, I just started friend requesting them.
So,
and I wasn't sure. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kim.
No, I just, and you guys would know better than I do, but I mean, it sounds like what you were noticing is now a big reason that Trevor has started Man Up to Cancer, which is in these communities that are colon cancer specific, which, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't colon cancer predominantly a male, there are more men diagnosed with colon cancer, correct?
Education moment here. It is not an old man's disease.
No,
in fact, it's very close to 50%.
Oh, really? Okay. So that's great for us to share with myself and the community that listens to this, because I do think that the stigma is out there that because of the community that seems to be marketed towards for checking. And I'm wondering if it's because also women are a little bit more proactive about their healthcare in general. Not always, but in general. So maybe, the marketing out there has skewed our vision of
so the women in COLONTOWN and the women in the other colon cancer groups are sorely underserved and underappreciated compared to the folks in the pink cancer, which
right.
I mean, we love those people as well and those advocates, but the women, so it's very close to 50% actually. So there's 150,000, roughly 150,000 new cases each year for colorectal cancer. And I think it's like 53% men, 47% women.
Okay.
But I noticed the same thing as Joe did, is that the people, even though it's 50-50, the people actually accessing these groups, engaging, going online, seeking help, it's probably 75-80% women, and so Joe and I both noticed this glaring thing where you're engaging with women patients and then women caregivers who are out there taking care of their guys. And you're kind of just like, where are all the guys at? And then you start realizing that, number one, guys just tend to isolate, which is the whole, as you mentioned, the whole purpose of the movement here. But then number two, so not just the guy isolating thing, but that women are, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
That's okay. It's a Friday. Let's give us
Friday. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Well, I get worked up about it. I'm like,
you were definitely going to be super excited about what you're going to say, though.
Yeah,
so
I know. I was super
I'm on
excited.
the edge of my seat.
Yeah, it's okay.
So I had treatment this morning, so I think I'm getting a little tired. Joe, let me skip on to the next question. You are very open about your feelings, your mental health struggles with cancer. Have you personally always been okay sort of sharing that emotional side, or is that something that evolved over time with you?
That's something that's evolved over time. I think being kind of forced into therapy with cancer, and also I think going to support group kind of helped open me up in a lot of ways.
Do you?
I think it's because. Go ahead.
No, do you feel that now, having gone through this journey and kind of exploring your mental health and towards cancer, but also, obviously in general, do you feel like, this is a question for both of you, do you feel like you wish that this would have been something you would have been able to come to terms with previous to cancer so that you had those tools kind of ready? Or do you think that it's such a different need dealing with cancer that it would have not mattered, going into this?
It's funny. I think I wish the day I had gotten diagnosed, they just went and said, and while you're here, let's just have you stop by the therapist office.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, while you're here, let's just have you go see the therapist.
Yeah.
You're going to need, I agree. It's not, I don't think it's talked about enough. I don't think, well, at least in 2018 when I was diagnosed, I didn't even know there was such thing as a cancer therapist. I didn't know that existed.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing about the group too is to encourage guys to find the help that works for them. Some people, like me and Joe, are really comfortable going to a therapist and talking it out. Other guys don't want to necessarily talk about it, but might want to do other tools. There's other tools in the toolbox besides that. Hey, my chemo brain kicked in, and I remembered what I was going to say. I was going to say, so guys also, besides they do isolate to begin with, but secondly, once they decide to not isolate, they go online and they're not necessarily comfortable sharing and putting themselves out there in a space that is 80% female, especially like who wants to go into a group like that and be like, I think it can be emasculating for some men to make those kind of admissions and do that kind of sharing in a space where there's so many women that can feel uncomfortable just in general. And then there's also, there's also there's anatomic discussions that we have some discussions in our Facebook group about our parts and our side effects and things like that just aren't going to happen in a place like Blue Hope Nation.
Women's.
Yeah, I do think that also, even the side effects that you guys go through with your treatment that can be specific to male anatomy and, things that you guys deal with. I also think that the nature of colorectal cancer is also one that you're not pancreatic cancer, right?
Right.
Like you're not which all these cancers are bad. I'm not
Yes.
trying to, but there is a certain stigma to a cancer that you have to discuss, you know, your stool, and you have to discuss all of those things that obviously are not a thing that in our culture we talk about. We don't talk about any of that stuff.
100%.
I mean, like I mentioned, my husband, though he doesn't have colon cancer, he does have a chronic illness that is, you know, kind of related in the sense that is, you know, he has something. Why can't I remember the name? Yes, he has Crohn's disease. So thank you, Trevor, for filling that one in.
Okay.
He has Crohn's disease, and that is one of those things that it also, you know, deals specifically with issues that it's hard to talk about. I see him be very kind of, you know, limiting in how much he wants to discuss about actually how his health is, because it has to deal so specifically with you know, all the things that we don't talk about.
I mean, there's something about talking about your rectum and your intestines, your colon, your butt, and your poop that is, you know, that can, I mean, it can be embarrassing, and there's such a stigma around it. Like, instead of being like, you know, I have something else that's not related to that anatomy, but it's a very good point. So Joe, let's talk about the Howling Place and the group. I reached out to you right toward the end of the year, 2019, end of the year, New Year's coming up. And I was like, hey, this is this idea I have for this group, Man Up to Cancer. I want to do this Howling Place where men can go and howl about their cancer, but also focus on their lives outside of cancer. And you were like immediately you're like, I'm on board, I'm in, let's do this. Right?
Yep. Yeah, because I had tried a couple of times with a couple of other things that weren't working out and kind of fell through. I knew I had about 200 men that I wanted to do something with, but I didn't know what it was going to be.
Right.
And then when you contacted me, I was like, I mean, I had kind of knew what you wanted to do because I had thought about it, but I didn't know how to put the pieces together.
Well, and I had no idea I had no idea that you had such a vast network at that point. It became very clear to me pretty soon after we started the group how big your network was, but I didn't know. I mean, I knew you a little bit through, we would comment to one another on in COLONTOWN. But I didn't know that you were already thinking about doing something like this. So then, so the framework was there, and then you just ran with it. Tell our listeners about, you know, what you did to sort of take this framework and then just start bringing people in.
Well, I think, you know, when you pushed the button on January 1st, I just went ahead and just totally invited those 200 men into the group. I was like, and I don't think you were expecting that. I think you were like, what in the world?
Wow, okay.
Because I remember us having that discussion that you said, I would be happy if 25 men joined the group.
Right.
You know,
and sorry to interrupt, but to me, the reason why I was like, hey, you know, it doesn't matter to me like how many people, because I was already starting to write the book and I was thinking about the website, and I was like, well, we should do a group too. So to me, it was like, I did not know what the response would be to doing a Facebook group to begin with.
Right.
I thought like, okay, maybe we'll get a couple friends, some people from this and that and come in. But to me, it was not like, oh, this is going to be this thing that takes off and it's going to impact a lot of people. But you saw that potential because you'd been in that Facebook space, you know, the social media for old people like us. So go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
Well, and I knew, you know, I had gotten just some really just a great group of men together that I knew if I could just get these guys together, there's no telling what we could do. You know, there was, you know, guys like Michael Mancini and Jason Greenspan and Tracy Morgan and all these guys that I knew that if I could get these men together, no matter what form of cancer they had, we could do some pretty incredible things. You know?
I think
that's the response we've gotten.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I've noticed that you guys are lending yourself to that is a real place that doesn't exist is one, obviously, for men to be able to feel comfortable to share things that are specific to the struggle that men deal with the cancer and also the treatment of cancer, and also being caregivers for maybe potential spouses who have cancer, but also that you guys are a place with an open door policy for men who have any specific struggle with cancer, not specifically colon cancer, how you guys met, because you were finding these communities that were specific to the cancer that you were struggling with.
Yes.
And, you know, I think that is not actually a very common place. Usually people have seeked out places that are specific to their cancer treatment and their cancer type. And you guys have created a place where you can share a real broad,
Exactly. And that's what Joe is. He has many talents, but one of the things that he does is find those bonds. So he is able to see all the things that bond us, the things we have in common, even though someone has brain cancer, someone has melanoma, someone has breast cancer. Male breast cancer is a real thing, and we have plenty of guys in our group with that. And prostate, testicular, colorectal, whatever it is. Joe's able to sort of say, hey, we're all going through similar things, because our group is all about general support. And it's all about the emotional impacts, really. Like, we don't dig into the science of treating specific diseases.
We don't.
Yeah. So go ahead, Joe. Tell us a little bit about.
And I think COVID has really changed our perspective a little bit, because we started Zoom meetings, and I don't, that wasn't like in the plan, I think, in the beginning. And then to have these Zoom meetings, and these guys, I remember the other day we were talking about just all the different forms of cancer. I think we had bladder cancer represented, prostate cancer was represented, testicular cancer was represented, brain cancer was represented. And the guys were talking about just how really we had these different forms of cancer, and they all had their different PSAs and CEAs and all these different cancer markers, but going through chemo was the same. The depression was the same. The feeling of loneliness was the same. The struggles in our marriages were the same. The isolation was the same. So they were all sharing about this and what they were all going through. And I think the other guys didn't realize really the toll that was going through each other, and how we were kind of dealing with it in our own ways. So that's,
and I think the members
encouraging.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
Do what?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think the membership, the people in, we call it the Wolf Pack, the people in the Wolf Pack follow Joe's lead in terms of what the vibe is and what we're trying to accomplish. And really at the end of the day, it's just all about togetherness and knowing that you're not alone, and knowing that you're facing these bonds, and you don't have to do it by yourself. And Joe, Joe is just always there to pick someone up, to comment, to he does birthday shout outs to every day to people in the group. So it is exactly. It is April, it is mid, I don't even know.
No, we're in May.
We're in May.
I don't.
So
coronavirus brain is real. I don't know what day it is. I don't know what month it is.
None of us do.
It is May, and we have, we're closing in on 600 guys in the group. Since January 1st. And they're from all across the country. They're from all across the world.
All over the world.
I mean,
and that's just through you guys having connections and network of people who want to say to somebody else, hey, I'm in this place, you should come join this place. This is not from you guys doing some kind of large marketing push or any,
no, not at all.
But it should be a proof to the nature and the need. There is a specific thirst for this type of connection and a safe place to share. I think that men ultimately keep themselves from being vulnerable, but need to be vulnerable, and you've given them that place to do that and not feel judged, and that is huge.
And so that's part of it. And then the other part is just guys being guys, because
you've got dirty jokes for sure.
Well, exactly. We have we can go there, some little blue humor, but so there is definitely the sharing, like guys that will go on there and they will share possibly for the first time ever about what they're feeling. But then on the other side of that, there's like, hey, look at this motorcycle I got the other day. Like, this is awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Joe is leading the charge to really talk about, yes, this group is a cancer group. We will talk about our cancers. We'll talk about what we're going through, but it's also just a life group. So we talk about our hobbies and passions. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, we do that, that ABC day, anything but cancer, once a month. And I think the first time we did it, the guys really didn't get it. I think a lot of them were like, well, why can't I talk about my cancer? or we get them saying, well, does that mean I can't talk about my cancer? What if I need to talk about it? And I think we had to convince them that we weren't opposed to that. We just wanted a day where you could talk about your motorcycles, you could talk about your hobbies,
your dogs,
about your dogs,
favorite food,
or what your kids' baseball team.
Giving space.
Yes.
So when we did I think when we did the one on May 1st, I think was the best reaction we got. I mean, I think we had like 50 something responses, comments on the one about the couples, where the guys just showed their spouses or their partners, and they talked about how long they've been married or together. Rob Miller talking about his motorcycles, going off on that motorcycle trip in Italy was tremendous.
Yeah, motorcycles is I gotta say, that is like one of the most popular topics on there. I've never been on a motorcycle except for when my dad had one when I was a kid.
I haven't either. And it's funny because one of the groups I'm in is Bikers Against Cancer, and there are all these motorcycle guys. And I just started posting in the group and reaching out to the group. And I post whenever Trevor posts something, I automatically post it in that group, and they're loving all of it. And I think we've actually gotten a couple of the guys who from that group who have joined Map to Cancer, because they see they need to see the need of it too.
I also, I mean, this is, I'm not sure how large of a group it makes up in your group, but I also find that, although I'm not a member of the private group, I know that one of the things that I found impressive is you also are giving yourself a place to be open for men who are in the LGBTQ community to also share their stories, because that is a very underserved community in a lot of ways. And so you're giving a place for men or people who are, really usually not feeling safe to share their story in other parts of their life. And they have this new place where they can not only share their story, but feel supported by other men. That is a huge underserved area in that community.
100%. And so, we are all about being inclusive, and diversity just makes us so much stronger and richer in there. And in fact, I'm trying to do some outreach in terms of diversity with people of color and communities of color, because that's another underserved. Right. When we talk about people who are not engaging online and getting support online, those communities are, statistically not as supported as they could be or need to be. And so we want to change that as well.
Right. And they probably, a lot of these communities have stopped looking for these resources because they don't find them. Right. So it is a hard place to try to find the outlets to make them aware, but also it's just a great space for you guys to understand that that's a huge positive, interaction that you guys are able to have is with these communities that otherwise don't see this support.
And there's another difference maker in our group that Joe and I have really emphasized from the start, which is this is not just going to be a group where people go talk. Like, we are actually going to take action too. And Joe talked about getting these guys together and there's nothing we can't do. That's true, because this group it takes action to, if there's a family in need, or if there's one of our members in need, or we know of someone out there in the community that we can help, even if it's just putting together a card drive or sharing some information about what someone needs, we can rally. Sorry, I'm making a lot of noise. We can rally people to be helpers. And there are so many people in our group who are already doing service projects on their own. Joe is every month Joe is putting together a list. We call it Joe's Wolfpack Trailblazers. And this is a list of guys in our group who are out there doing amazing community service work. One of the principles of Man Up to Cancer is accept help. Like, when you need help, accept it. And when you're able to give it back, then pay it forward. And there's so many guys paying it forward in that group. Joe's one of them. Like, he's done a couple amazing initiatives with the group already, and he's always thinking of ways that he can help. I mean, Joe just has a huge heart, and there's other guys like that too. So a group that can actually take action when action needs to be taken is something that isn't being done enough. And so, Joe, do you want to talk a little bit about your thoughts on how the group can be a vehicle for doing good?
Well, I think the perfect example of that would be Jaden Oaks.
Right.
Early on, I think that was back in January, his grandmother, Jane Vincent, reached out to me because they were coming here. I live in Durham, North Carolina, and there's a hospital here, UNC Children's Hospital. So Jaden was coming here to have surgery because he was diagnosed with what would basically be called stage 4 colon cancer.
Yeah, so I'll give the quick, so just a little bit of background. Jaden is 12 years old. He's from California, diagnosed with colon cancer as a 12-year-old. And he comes out to North Carolina where Joe is, and he goes out there to get this life-saving surgery, which ended up being a 17-hour surgery at the University of North Carolina. And Joe connected with, like he was talking about, Jane, Jaden's grandmother. And yeah, so go ahead, Joe, and tell about how that played out.
Well, basically, I just told her simply, I said, look, just consider me your go for your trip in North Carolina. I'll pick you up at the airport, take you to the hospital, whatever you need. And I also offered to do just a card drive, because I knew kids love to get cards. They love to get things in the mail. And I said, that would be really cool to do while he's here. And she was very open to that. So basically just started sharing in a number of the groups I'm in, including Man After Cancer. We were the lead in it and just in the card drive. And I think ultimately, we got close to 1,000 cards. Literally, these cards were posted all over his room. His grandmother just taped them all over his room. And the nurses and the staff of the hospital were blown away. They'd never seen anything like that before.
Yeah, I mean, Jaden and Jane are just champions. I mean, those people they're amazing. They're inspiring. And it's all about relationships. Like, so a lot of people, Joe just forms these relationships with these people, and it is real, it's authentic, and he just figures out how to use his network. Again, Man Up to Cancer was just a piece of this. Like, basically, Joe is connecting with all these groups and all these people in Cancerland to rally around this boy and his family. And
well, it was amazing how many foundations are out there that I didn't even know of that wanted to do good. Even some of the guys in our group, like one of the guys, Austin Tribble, Jaden was losing his hair because of his surgery. He started losing some of his hair from the hot chemo he had. And he brought up $100 worth of hats just for Jaden to wear because he knew what that was like. And the other guys were offered to do different things for him. And there was a foundation, that even paid for his first class flight back home in the end, because he needed that. But that was a foundation that was not very well heard of, but it was doing well in the community.
Yeah, and at this point, like as a group, like we're not an organization like some of these other people. We're not a foundation.
Right.
Like, we're just pitching in when and where we can. So, and we wish we had capacity to help so many more people.
Right.
And, hopefully down the road we can build that out. Right now, it's basically us just having our ears up to where they're
exactly,
and then trying to help out.
But you also are a community that's able to know the places that could potentially fund situations. I mean, I think that feet on the ground, you're basically the equivalent of a grassroots movement. You're putting people on the ground internationally who know of other people who might need support. And then through that network, you're able to find the outlets that you need at that time, which is great.
That's a really good point. I hadn't really thought about that too much, but I think that's the power. That's the power.
Yeah. I mean, when you created this, Trevor, you talked about it being a wolf pack. And that's one thing I thought about, because as men, even as boys, we enjoyed our team spirit. We enjoyed our softball games, our baseball games.
Right.
That whole camaraderie. And I think that's where you were going with. I think you were trying to build something. You were trying to build that within Cancerland,
right?
Because that's what guys are appealed to.
Yeah, I will say that it's like we're the team. So the movie Major League, where the Cleveland Indians basically have an owner that wants them to lose. It's kind of like we were all drafted onto the cancer team, and it's not the team you want to be on.
Right.
But when you get drafted on the team, you're like, well, I'm on the team. So I bet where's my stuff?
Exactly.
I got to get my hat. I got to get my sweatshirt. And because you are on a team and you do have a team behind you. So totally, that's absolutely where I was going with the whole thing, is like, guys need to feel like even though they've gotten this shitty thing dealt to them, that there's you're not booted out off of a team. Like, you still have one. So yeah.
Right.
So we are getting close on time. I do want to put you, is there anything else that we didn't talk about today yet that you really feel is critical to get out there, Joe?
No, like I said, I think we're doing great. I think the group is heading in the right direction. Far beyond what you and I even thought. I think
Yeah,
at the beginning.
you are amazing. I'm so thankful for you. So huge gratitude. And again, if this Man Up to Cancer thing flamed out next week, getting to know you and having that relationship and doing what we've done in the past 5 months has totally been worth it. So thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put you on the Man Up to Cancer hot seat. I need to come up with a better name. There's too many hot seats. We got to come up with a better name for that at some point. Maybe Kellen can help me.
Yeah, I also feel like with a colon cancer community, hot seat's not an awesome option.
You know what?
Maybe we should rename
it a lot.
Yeah. Agreed. All right. Here we go.
Yeah, really.
I think I got 6 questions if we get through them all, but okay, here we go. The hot seat, which we will rename, as Kellen mentioned, is basically a chance for us to, cancer gets heavy. Cancer can be really heavy. So on a lot of these shows, I just want to have fun at the end and ask a bunch of random questions that are, just for fun. So here's number 1. If you were footwear, what kind of shoes would you be?
Oh, I guess old school, Air Jordans.
Air Jordans.
Man, that's what I was thinking.
That Michael Jordan days, just back in the,
love it.
Especially with
an
this
aspirational shoe.
All right,
exactly.
Perfect. You're starting
being a Carolina boy, North Carolina boy, Yeah.
Okay. UFOs and aliens are among us. Yes or no?
I think there might be some spiritual beings out there.
Yeah, hey, there is no middle ground on the hot seat, Joe. Yes or no?
I definitely feel like there are people.
He's going yes. He's going yes.
Yes, I think there is a possibility.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like there's enough people in this world who are conspiring against the general health of our planet. So why not think they're aliens?
All right, great.
Exactly. Especially after 51, the whole 51 thing recently.
I'm going to list off these people. You might find them familiar. Colonel Mustard, Miss Scarlet, Mr. Green, Mrs. Peacock, Mrs. White, or Professor Plum. Which clue suspect actually committed the crime?
Oh gosh, Mrs. Peacock.
Peacock. That's what my wife said this morning. 2 people think Mrs. Peacock did it.
She's too flashy. She's too flashy.
Too flashy. Yeah.
All right, we're going with Peacock. I think she's guilty too. What actor would play you in a movie about your life? I have my own answer for this, but I'm interested to see what you're going to say.
Wow.
Go aspirational too. Here, do the Michael Jordan of actors.
Yes.
Oh gosh. Man, that's a hard one. I can't even think right now.
Okay. And if you need to pass, you can just say pass.
I'm going to pass on. I can't.
Okay, good, because I have an answer for you. It's Richard Gere, dude. Your hair is like it's so Richard Gere.
The older Richard Gere.
It's like you're the silver fox. Like there's no doubt.
It's that genteel manner, man.
Oh man, North Carolina.
Yeah. I'm getting closer to Colonel Sanders every day.
2 more questions. Would you rather be forced to dance every time you heard music, or be forced to sing along to any song you heard?
Forced to dance to music.
Dance. So you'd rather dance than sing?
Yeah.
Okay. Last one, and we're gonna get serious here. How hard is it, Joe, to be a trophy husband?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, I'm definitely that. I mean, being a stay-at-home dad, yeah, I'm well taken care of. So yes, take good care of me.
You are quite a catch, Joe Bullock. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Trevor.
I appreciate it, brother. We'll talk soon.
You're welcome. Love you, man. You guys are great.
Thank you
so much for having me on.
It was great hearing your story, Joe.
Thank you, Kellen.
All right, we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much.
All right,
bye.